Welcome to another mini episode of Relationscapes. We're mapping the stories and ideas that shape who we are and how we connect with each other. I'm journalist Blair Hodges, joining you from Salt Lake City. Olivia Abtahi is a writer and filmmaker born in Washington, D.C. to an Iranian father and an Argentine mother. She's published a few acclaimed novels about awkward teenagers, but her latest book is for younger readers. It's called The Interpreter. It's about a bilingual girl who's helping her immigrant parents navigate life in the United States, and it's fun and insightful. But I was especially curious what it was like publishing such a book in the middle of a widespread campaign of oppression against immigrant communities. So let's talk about it. Without further ado, Olivia Abtahi joins us right now. Olivia, welcome to Relationscapes.
Thank you so much for having me, Blair.
We're talking about The Interpreter, and I read this book with my 9-year-old and asked him if he had any questions about it. I thought I would lead off with something from him. And I was surprised because his first question was, why wouldn't they let Cecilia's dad smile when he was getting his picture taken at the DMV? And I actually didn't have an answer for that.
Wait, so. I know because it's because when you're getting pulled over, they're assuming that you won't be smiling, so they want it to match the expression that you're going to be having.
So have you had that experience? Have you been there and like, don't smile? Like, how did that even come to mind for you?
Funny story. So Monica Arnaldo is the illustrator, and she also served as an interpreter for her family. She's Mexican-Canadian, and that whole page, there's like a quote unquote like montage on that spread of just like little interactions. She put that in from her experience. So there's a moment where the dad is smiling or trying to smile at the DMV.
His smile's so funny too. Yeah, he's got this like, this is not a great smile, but I'm doing it.
He looks like a scared guppy, like that. And then there's a moment where Cecilia is, her mom is on the phone. And the mom is listening on the phone, and it says, for Spanish, press 3, but it's in English. So Cecilia's translating press 3. So that was another moment that Monica put in, and I thought those were just brilliant.
Marque cinco is what I usually hear. Like they always put it at cinco for some reason. Okay, so that's good. I looked at my driver's license, and I'm kind of smiling. My wife suggested that you can't show teeth. She said she was at the DMV, and they were like, oh, we can't see your teeth. Maybe that was another way of saying don't smile, I guess.
Maybe. That's so random.
Okay. So, all right. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, there's an estimated 11 million kids in the United States who are acting as interpreters or translators for their parents. And I wondered if you were one of those children growing up.
Yeah. My dad is from Iran and my mom is from Argentina. And they met in Spain. My mom was working for the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees during the Vietnamese boat people crisis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Her department won the Nobel Peace Prize in the 80s.
Wow.
Yeah. And one of her clients was my dad. So they both learned English in schools within their home countries. So more of an anglicized English. And in Spain, my dad learned Spanish. And so they kind of speak English and Spanish together. So growing up for me, they knew English well. They could speak English fluently, but there were still cultural things that I had to explain, American things that I had to explain from their like English school upbringing. So there were definitely moments where I was interpreting more cultural things. Like my dad would offer, another parent a cup of tea, and the parent would say, "Oh, no, I gotta go. I'm good." And my dad would be like, "What just happened? Like I offered someone tea." So
did they say stuff like put it in the boot and stuff like that? Weird,
Sometimes my mom, even today, when she's like saying the word like figure, like, oh, you have a nice figure, she'll say, oh, they have a nice figure. Like just weird English moments. And my dad, Persian has a lot of French in it as well. So he would say a mini skirt is a mini jupe. There's just like random things. And, he grew up in northern Iran, which was kind of not officially colonized by Russia, but there was a big presence there. So he grew up with Russian as well. It was just a mishmash of languages in our household.
Oh, yeah. I also wonder now what you're going to do to earn a Nobel Prize, because you have to sort of surpass the parent. So what are you going to do?
Well, that's kind of the nice thing, is that I will never be as cool as my mom and dad. I know some people think that being a traditionally published author is a big deal, but like my parents truly do not care. So it's very freeing. I said, I was on NPR the other day, and my dad was like, cool. So anyway. But, I think that's honestly with a lot of first gen kids too. It's like your parents have survived the hardest passage to get to this country. So it's not anything you do will just never be as impressive to them.
Yeah. So maybe that's awesome when you're at the DMV and telling them not to smile. You get to be like, hey, you get to kind of have some authority in that situation. Like, don't smile, Dad.
Exactly. Yeah. I finally am the authority now.
Yeah. Now, you've written some other books for older kids, but this is the first time you've written for a younger audience. So I wondered about that transition for you, how you made that decision and how difficult it was.
Writing picture books is the hardest category of books to write in, hands down. And every author worth their salt will agree, because with a typical, 40 to 140,000 word book, you have a ton of runway to get your point across. Mm-hmm. And Blair, as you know, as a dad with a picture book, you are up against the hardest audience, which is a kid. Mm-hmm. And you only have about 500 words of runway. So every single word counts. Every single word is so precious. Doing edits on a picture book is where, can you hear my kiddos?
Barely. And I think that would even filter out with my fancy filtering.
Okay.
If it doesn't, it's kind of cool. If people
are
hearing this right
books.
now, they just know this is life.
This is life. That's my screaming child. Yeah, with the picture book, it's just so much harder, and there's a lot more thinking than writing, I will say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just talked to Kyle Lukoff, who's another author, and he wrote "Call Me Max," which is a great. And then now he's writing middle grade novels, and he said the same thing. He said how, for the same reasons, every single word counts. And so when he made the transition, it was really hard to get out of the mindset of every single sentence has to be perfect and do this thing, because that's what he was used to doing in these, in these picture books. So that made the transition tough for him. You kind of went the other direction of starting out with these books for older kids and going back to the picture books.
Yeah. First of all, I love Kyle. He's incredible.
Yeah.
And for me, what I ended up having to do with this picture book is I had to write it as a screenplay, because there's so much dialogue. There's so much, the narration I treated as a voiceover. And then what's happening on the page is different.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then there's a moment, which is more of a screenplay thing, where you have the voiceover, which is outside of the diegesis of the quote film of the story. But at the end, Cecilia wrests control from the voiceover. So you have kind of non-diegetic voiceover into diegetic, right? Now it's within the story. Kind of a good example is when you hear a song in a movie just in the soundtrack, and then it goes into the car stereo of the characters.
Yeah, exactly.
So it goes from outside of the story of this omniscient presence into the kind of protagonist's world. So I had to play around a lot with that. And yeah, it was so hard. It was just so hard.
And did you get to talk about diegetic on NPR, or did they tell you not? They're like, oh, well, maybe NPR would be okay with the deep level of nerdiness on that.
Such an NPR topic.
Yeah. Okay, so as I was reading this with my son, I was kind of worried about his older sibling speaks Spanish. And it's kind of a point of contention between them. I think there's a little jealousy because he didn't get to be in that program, so he's not learning Spanish. My older one is. So whenever he hears Spanish, it's a little bit triggering for him, because it's kind of like, oh, that's something that my sibling gets to do and I don't. So I approached this book with a little hesitation, because I was like, oh, he's kind of got this jealous thing going on. And he immediately locked into the story. And the way that you have, there's a lot of Spanish in the book, but it's right with the interpretation of it, because the whole point of having the Spanish there is to show Cecilia, the main character, translating for her family. So he stayed plugged in the whole time. I wondered how it was going to go, and he really liked it. And I think the art kind of helped with that too. The illustrations are so rich and beautiful. Were they digitally done, or is this by hand stuff?
Yeah, so Monica does, I believe she starts by hand with, I want to say, colored pencil and then watercolor. And then I believe she moves into Procreate on the app. Oh, it's an iPad app.
Yeah, you can kind of clean it up.
Yeah, and she's so talented. We're so lucky we even managed to nab her.
How did you know? This is Monica Arnaldo. How did you know about her work?
Coquila, my publisher, recommended her. And I knew about her work because my daughter was obsessed with a picture book called Are You a Cheeseburger, which Monica wrote, which is a story about a raccoon who is really hoping a seed that he plants grows into a cheeseburger plant.
Oh.
And she is so funny. She has the best sense of humor, and it's very visual. So I'm not surprised that your son was so drawn to it, because she really understands kind of like that, the child's attention span and where their eye goes.
Do you have a favorite illustration from the book that you really just saw it and were like, oh my goodness, this is amazing?
Yes. And this is another one that Monica kind of did on her own. But there's a moment where Cecilia meets another interpreter for another family. And it's an interpreter who is translating from English to Persian. And the other interpreter, the little boy, says, how old is your little one? Because his mom had asked, how old is that baby? And then Cecilia translates from the Persian to the English, English back to Spanish, and you have this whole conversation. And I felt so seen, because so much of my life felt like this game of telephone. And I hadn't put that in. I hadn't even thought about it. But for her to open it up into a whole world, you said there's 11 million kids in this country alone. And it just felt so special to me. So I love that. I love that spread so much. And I have like blown it up and framed it. And it's really close to my heart.
The book starts out by saying some kids have one job, to be a kid. Cecilia worked 2. And we see Cecilia sitting at this grown-up's desk with an oversized suit that doesn't fit. She's pouring some coffee and sort of looking over these documents and papers to signal playing an adult role. Did you come up with that conceit as well? Like, did you have that in mind as you were writing the text for the book?
Yes. So that desk, and you'll see this later on, that desk in her office, the placing of the furniture is the exact same placing as her kitchen. And Cecilia's almost disassociating. And so that desk, we see it turn into the kitchen table. We see the like water cooler and stuff. It was actually like a fridge. And even just deciding that she was going to be drinking coffee, because I'm Argentinian, we drink mate, and we decided to kind of turn into Mexican Spanish because that's more familiar with folks in North America. And so having the coffee, and then even the coffee mug is still the Argentinian flag. There's just, even on that first spread, the amount of care and detail that had to go in was enormous. But the suit was Monica's idea. I had written Cecilia in a suit, but the oversized fit of it and how the suit is such a foil for how she's feeling, that was on Monica.
That's what's so perfect, is we get to see Cecilia, doing things, as it says, some kids just have to be a kid. She's got these bigger responsibilities, and it doesn't always fit right. So how did you balance the challenges and maybe some of the joys or benefits of being a young interpreter in the book?
Kids love to see kids in suits. I think Boss Baby has shown this. I think showing children with agency is always going to be a big hit, because it's such an honor, right? To have your parents rely on you, and you feel so special when you're rolling up to these things and like you have a doctor or an accountant or, someone at the DMV deferring to you. And that's the first time in your life when someone is going to speak to you instead of your parents. But to keep that balance, and this still happens to me, like when I go on vacation and my husband can't speak the language and I'm translating, you get so burnt out. You just get so burnt out. And so the challenge for me was to show how much pride Cecilia took in her job, but then to show how it's too much. So things like a montage, see the overload, and see her suit growing bigger and bigger until it's just like not fitting her well, to show her exhaustion. That helped kind of strike that tone.
I noticed it in her face expressions too. She goes from being engaged and confident and almost happy about it, and then as that goes on, by the end, she's just totally beat. She's just,
Yeah. And I think every time we go into some kind of interpretation situation, you go in like super thrilled, but it is a lot of work.
And you talk about all the different contexts too. There's a great image of kind of her little calendar where it's like, okay, here's all her things. And she has soccer practice on there, but then she has like the DMV and the doctor and accountant and just all of these things. And this is kind of when she gets to start communicating to her parents that they start picking up on her exhaustion at that point.
Yeah, they definitely pick up on it. And what I really want to make sure of throughout the book was that the parents aren't bad parents. I didn't want them to have no dignity throughout the story. I wanted to show that these are just normal parents. These are great folks, but they just aren't noticing the toll that this can take, because you think it's so little, just, translating one or two phrases, but it really does take its toll. And the calendar on there, there's also moments that we didn't even show, which is like go through voicemails, go through the mail. Like those are things where you need a kid to kind of go through. And even though the parents can read it, you still need like someone to say what it actually means.
Mm-hmm. Do you think different things might stand out for younger readers versus adult readers as they're going through this book?
Yes, absolutely. I think for adult readers, this is meant to just open up the conversation. We have the English version, The Interpreter, and the Spanish version, La Intérprete, simultaneously published. I wanted this book to be a way for parents to just start to talk about this unspoken thing that so many families in this country have to go through. I think for kids, once again, having a little kid with agency throughout the world, in the adult world, whether it's at the ER, like at the DMV, like we talked about, I think for kids, they really grasp onto that. And the moment where Cecilia's soccer friends want to play with her, but Cecilia's busy, that's something that my kids always pick up on too, where they're like, oh, but she wants to play soccer. And it's like, well, she has to clock into her job, and she's holding the briefcase, and like we see the intercom. So yeah, it's funny how different kids and different adults like pick up on different things.
What do you think adults should keep in mind when they're interacting with someone whose child's interpreting for them? I haven't been in that situation a lot. I've been in that situation a few times. But what are some considerations that we can make as adults when we're speaking with parents through a child interpreter?
I think just talking about it is the first thing. It is such an unspoken rule of filial piety for first-gen kids. It's like, well, my parents sacrificed everything to bring me to this country. Of course, I can translate, this McDonald's order and like go with them to the drive-through. But those little things add up. And I do think just starting the conversation, saying, hey, this is work. This is a paid job for adults. This is work. This is happening. Even just saying that this is happening is huge. And ultimately, the book is a book about teaching children how to ask for help. But I think for families, I really just wanted to start the conversation, because it is such an unspoken thing. It is just assumed. I know folks my age who are still translating for their parents, and they have children of their own. And it's not their parents' fault. I get it. It's very difficult, but concessions have to be made. And when you bring it to the light, you can schedule it. You can set limits. You can set healthy boundaries, and you can ask others for help too, because when it's just in the shadows and it's this murky, shameful thing that you don't want to talk about, how you have to go with your mom to the hairdresser, then it's tough to set that kind of balance.
How about logistically, like in that moment? Because so you've done this. Like, should I be looking at the kid and then the parents? Like, how does this work? Like when I speak to deaf people, for example, and there's a paid interpreter, I try not to speak to the interpreter. I try to just look at the person I'm talking to and talk to them and let the interpreter do their work. With kids, it might be different because they kind of maybe need to feel engaged. I don't know. This is kind of the negotiations I was thinking about.
Yeah, I think it's just really up to the situation. I've spoken to deaf and hard of hearing folks, and I do think, because it's usually an adult that I'm speaking to with an interpreter in between them, yes, I do speak directly to the adult. But with the kid, I feel like, because I haven't done it, because I usually speak the language and I can just speak to the parent. I do think you'll probably just want to bounce between the two to make the child feel engaged and to let the parent know that like you are listening to their concerns usually.
Yeah.
I am lucky enough to have a lot of like medical providers in my life, a lot of educators in my life who say, yeah, this is my reality all the time. We could get a paid interpreter, but we have to request it 2 days in advance, and it's just not feasible every time. And so they usually just bounce between it. Like at a parent-teacher conference, it's like, yeah, you're going to sit in that little chair at the little table.
That's the best for a kid too, by the way. That's the best opportunity. Oh, Cecilia is so great in class. No problems.
Totally. Just say, yep, she's got straight A's. She's wonderful.
So we mentioned that Cecilia was kind of burning out. Her parents start to see it. They come up with a solution. Cecilia's older siblings, come in town. They have moved away. They come in town. They can kind of bear some of the load from her. Not all families have that kind of option. What other kinds of options do you see families doing to try to help their kids when they might feel overwhelmed or feel a little bit of that burnout that Cecilia is feeling.
I mean, unfortunately, I don't see families working in this way to help the burnout. I think, once again, families don't talk about it. This is just so under the radar. But I do think if you don't have someone else to help with this burden, in the book, Cecilia gets her older brother and her aunt. I think just scheduling and having blocks, I do think helps, because then you're in work mode, quote unquote work mode, or like we are in interpreting mode. It's when you're just constantly being torn in different directions and just always, quote, on, that I think is where it's really taxing. So just having moments where it's like, all right, this afternoon, we're doing the DMV. We're going through the voicemails. We're just knocking it out, I do think is one way to help. And then, and once again, I don't want to put all this pressure on the parents. I do think we are very lucky in the United States to have free English lessons. And I do wish that some of these older adults, I know they're exhausted. I know many of these families are working like 2 to 3 jobs, but just having Duolingo on your phone is so huge. Renting free Pimsleur, audiobooks from the library, just one of those things to just show your kid that this isn't going to be forever. I do not mean to tell parents they have to assimilate fully, but to just kind of see where their kid is coming from. You know, my grandma moved here when she was, I want to say, in her late 50s, and she passed away in her mid-80s in this country, and she still was not comfortable with English when she moved from Iran. And I think some of the parents, you know, we do need to make sure that we're making an effort too, and we're showing our kids that this isn't forever. We are trying as well.
It sounds like a big primary audience, or a hopeful audience for this book then, is for the parents who are having their child interpret, that you're hoping that they can get more into the shoes of their children and see some of that, more of that mental load then. It's not just for the kids who are interpreting or for people like me who might interact with kids who are interpreting, but the parents of kids who are interpreting. It sounds like you really hope they get something out of the book. Absolutely.
And when I was kind of like shopping this book around, I was talking to publishers and I said, this has to be published in 2 languages. Like that's it. It needs to have a simultaneous English and Spanish. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of this book. And it's just so, like, once again, I cannot emphasize this enough. We don't talk about this. You do not talk about the fact that you are relying on your 5-year-old to do your taxes. And I just wanted to bring it to light. And the people who need this book the most are going to need the book to be in majority Spanish. And, you know, I feel for these families. When they go into a bookstore, they're probably just already writing off half the stock. So I just want to make sure that they have options as well, and that this community is so undervalued just because they don't speak English. And I wanted to show like, hey, no, you guys deserve tools as well for your toolbox.
We're talking with Olivia Abtahi about the book The Interpreter. It's a picture book about a young soccer-loving girl who also serves as an interpreter for her Spanish-speaking parents. She's also written other award-winning novels like Perfectly Parvin, Azar on Fire, and Twin Flames. She joins us today from Denver, Colorado, where she lives with her husband and 2 kids. So you probably started working on this book at kind of a tumultuous time. I don't know how long the process took, but at least part of it was during the presidential election season where racism was playing a central role. And I wondered what your thinking was as you were watching that unfold and how it might have impacted how you put the book together.
Yeah, that was a big part of it. And I think you just feel so hopeless sometimes. For me, writing this book was so cathartic. But I wanted to write a book for these kids who are these interpreters and these families. But when I started writing it, it was so insipid and filled with messages and like, you know, lessons. And it was my first picture book. I didn't know what I was doing. And at the time, I had happened to see a couple movies. I feel like when you're an author, it's like trying to grow an almond. Like you need so much water just for like one kernel. And for me, I need to consume so much content or read books or go on walks. And at the time, I had watched a TV show called Severance. I'd watched a movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I'm showing Olivia my finger trap that I have at my desk here for all my Severance fan listeners.
Yes. And a movie called Coda. So Children of Deaf Adults. And in all of those scenes, there was something from the visuals that inspired me. And that's when I kind of was like, well, what if I wrote this as a screenplay and not as sometimes just like switching from Microsoft Word to a Google Doc to pen and paper just helps the creative process. So while all of the news was going on, while all of the executive orders were happening, at the time the Muslim ban was in effect, and Perfectly Parvin, a big part of the book is based on the Muslim ban. And my mom is an immigration attorney, and every time a new executive order goes through, her law office it is just an onslaught of folks trying to figure out their status, what they should do, next steps, legal pathways to citizenship. So yeah, I just kind of wrote it from a place of hope and despair at the same time. We just really needed that in our lives.
I think it's a good choice. I mean, I face a similar thing with doing the podcast. Is there's so much happening right now that every episode could get sunken into a discussion about something that the administration is doing, some group that's being harmed directly. And I want to address those things, but I also want the show to be bigger than that and have a shelf life that's longer than that. And so, yeah, I don't see you trying to like push some sort of ham-fisted political message in the book. It's sort of like you just want the story to do the telling. You don't have to put in any slogans or, that's what I felt as I'm reading. But I'm also thinking about how annoying it is to also be like, okay, I'm putting this out there while the world feels like it's on fire. Like,
totally. And I think like in Perfectly Parvin, she's dealing with the Muslim ban and a really anti-Muslim kind of environment. But she's like, who's going to be my date to homecoming? Like when kids are dealing with this stuff, like I grew up in DC. During the DC sniper, it was like, we have to practice for, marching band indoors. Like this is awful. We're not thinking like, like there's a dude in a like Dodge Capri, like trying to like kill us.
Just kill random people.
Yes. Yeah. And so I think with this one, in this current administration, kids aren't like, help, I'm being oppressed. They're more just like, okay, well, like, how do I deal with this? And what does my day-to-day look like? For better or for worse, it's tough to focus on the big picture when so much of your daily life is like upended. So I hear you on wanting to address, what's going on in our current political climate. But when it comes to kids, it's just filtering down in such a different way.
Mm-hmm. Do you expect any kind of pushback or criticism for writing a story that's celebrating bilingualism, or do you think you won't have to worry about that too much yourself? I mean, a lot of the book bans and stuff we're seeing are targeting LGBTQ books in particular. So, this book doesn't really deal with those issues.
I mean, I don't expect it. Ask Marco Rubio, like, is this offensive? For better or for worse, there are a lot of Spanish speakers in the current administration. And at the end of the day, this country does not have an official language. English is not the official language. I am in Colorado. I am on what was formerly Mexico, or Mexico at the time as it was pronounced. So, it's like, at this point, I'm like, come at me, bro. Like, what do you want me to do? It's like, what? Because I had to like learn the Control-Alt code for an accent, like in this book, you're gonna like come for me. I saw that Julianne Moore's book yesterday was banned, and it's about a girl with freckles. And I'm like, okay, like of all of the, European groups to ban a book about freckles, like you're kind of, there's
as a redhead, I was getting a little more worried.
Yeah, I was just like, this might really interest your demographic, but okay. So, at this point, if they ban it, like whatever, it's just so
it's good publicity. Maybe more people will. We'll hear about the book.
The advance for this book was paid for by the anti-racist baby book controversy. Oh, yeah. So you know what? If Ted Cruz wants to come after this one too, I hope the sales from this pay for the advance for another Kyle Lukoff picture book, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, let's close with regrets, challenges, and surprises. I always like to ask authors about the process of making the book a little bit more. If there's anything now that you change about the book now that it's out, what the hardest part, what the biggest challenge was in writing it, or something that surprised you as you were putting the book together. And you don't have to speak to all three. You can choose any of those.
Something that surprised me was because this was my first time working with an illustrator. All of my previous books, you send the Word document off, someone else slaps a cover on. I don't really interact with the cover artist. Something that really surprised me was just how thoughtful the illustrator is. And as I mentioned before, Monica put in a bunch of text that I did not write. And I really enjoyed how collaborative that was. And so as I write more picture books, I want to make sure that at one point in the process, I am saying, hey, to the illustrator, like, is there text that you want to put in? Like, I am not precious with this. Like, it is going to be stronger with both of us putting in input because I'm making illustration notes left and right in my manuscript. I hope you feel comfortable adding words and text too, because, you know, this is both of our books. So that's something I definitely want to do for next time. Not because I think I failed the first time, but because I just didn't know that was an option. And I just want to make sure that's like really collaborative because they're going to come up with ideas that I never could have.
My favorite illustration is the opening illustration that shows her suit and her shoes side by side. And then when you get to the end of the book, you see her soccer uniform and her cleats side by side, which serves as this bookend of kind of her two uniforms that she wears. And it encapsulates the book so well. They're beautiful illustrations. I really loved that.
And did you notice whose jersey that is, Blair?
No, I'm not a soccer person. I'm so sorry.
I made sure that it was the best soccer player in the whole world, which is Messi, Lionel Messi.
Messi. Okay, I do know that name.
Just because, once
Messi
again...
Messi and Beckham is a person I think I'm supposed to know. Is that right?
Who? But once again, because we chose to do this in Mexican Spanish, I still needed my Argentinian touches. And yeah, that uniform... The
10. I do actually see those around my kid's school, so I should have known that.
Absolutely.
Well, Olivia, thanks for talking to us about the book. Again, it's called The Interpreter. It's a terrific book, and I really enjoyed reading it and talking to you about it.
Thank you so much, Blair. Such a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Relationscapes. We're mapping the stories and ideas that shape who we are and how we connect with each other. If you connected with this mini episode of Theme, you might try out some other episodes. There's Unearthing Family Secrets with Ingrid Rojas Contreras and Border Separations with Efren Olivares. And if you're enjoying the show in general, I invite you to go rate and review it in Apple Podcasts. You just look up the show Relationscapes, scroll down to the rating and reviewing section, and let me know your thoughts about the show. Mates of State provides our theme song. Relationscapes is part of the Dialogue Podcast Network. I'm journalist Blair Hodges in Salt Lake City, and let's hang out again soon.